guys, my name is Nicola and I'm a neonatal nurse. Today I'm going to be doing a more in-depth video about how to become a neonatal nurse. The term NICU nurse and neonatal nurse essentially mean the same thing, and you may hear some overlap in their terminology. NICU stands for neonatal intensive care unit, so people may refer to a neonatal nurse as a NICU nurse. So you might someone might call you a NICU nurse and you might not necessarily work within the intensive care unit, but the terms are used interchangeably and there is an overlap, but they mean exactly the same thing. To become a neonatal nurse, you will be required to have a degree, and that degree should either be in paediatric nursing, adult nursing, or a midwifery degree. These degrees will enable you to go into the neonatal specialism. When it comes to gaining experience within neonates, I would really advise you to request to have a placement within a neonatal unit where possible. I know that not all universities can put you in a neonatal unit, and I know that neonatal placements are quite popular, so not everybody is able to have the opportunity to go. But if you do get the chance to request a placement and neonates is something that you are interested in, I would really advise you to do so. I think having a placement within neonates gives you amazing exposure, gives you great insight, and you can really see if the specialism is for you. If you don't get the opportunity to request it for placement, you might consider selecting the specialism during your elective placement if your university encourages elective placements. And alternatively, look for opportunities within your current placements. So even if you are on a cardiac specialism, or even if you are working within a nephrology placement, you are still going to have sick babies. And so I would advise you to ask your mentors, to ask the nurse in charge, to have that exposure to working with sick babies and infants, because that will still give you some insight to what it's like looking after sick babies and working in collaboration with their families. And if you are a nurse who is working within a unit that's not neonates, but you have a desire to maybe go into neonatology at some point, then again, the same advice. Speak to your nurse in charge, see if you can be assigned to sort of the younger babies and the infants, and that will give you the exposure to see what neonates is like to an extent. And you can still gain some great skills that will be transferable just by looking after babies as well. My first post as a neonatal nurse was actually when I was working abroad in Australia. I was working in a tertiary centre. They took very sick babies, particularly those with surgical conditions. I, however, was working in their high dependency unit and their special care unit. And I did have a placement in neonates as a student, which I absolutely loved. But it was really good to actually be able to go into the specialism as a qualified nurse and get some exposure and see if I really liked it. I made that move into neonates during my career break, so it was a bit of a chance for me to do something new. I was working in cardiac before, but going back to my previous advice, I used to look after a lot of babies when I was working within cardiac, and I really enjoyed looking after this type of patient, the infants over, say, sort of like the toddlers and the teenagers. And so I already knew that working with babies at some point was something that I would want to do. I would say one of the benefits of working within a high dependency and special care unit when you first go into neonates is that it allows you to get to grips with the basics. It allows you to really understand neonates and understand what the specialism is all about, and it allows you to find your feet. And then once my career break was over, I was absolutely sold on neonates, and I knew it was going to be the specialism for me. So when I moved back to the UK, that was when I made the decision to go to a level 3 neonatal unit. Within the UK, neonatal units are graded into different levels. So from level 1 to a level 3 medical and surgical units. And level 1 tends to be the less sicker patients, and level 3 are the sort of surgical and very, very sick medical babies. The things that you can expect from your job when working within neonates is great satisfaction, knowing that you've made a difference, you've made an impact, and knowing that you've been at the start of someone's journey into this world is an amazing experience. No 2 days are ever the same, and you will be doing so many different things as a neonatal nurse on a day-to-day basis. You might be at the bedside as a bedside nurse. You could have 4 patients one day and 1 really, really sick patient the next day. You can expect to be working in collaboration with a range of different healthcare professionals, dietitians, pharmacists, doctors, speech and language therapists, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, community nurses, social workers, health visitors. You can expect to be teaching parents at the bedside. You can expect to be going out for transfers to different units. You can expect to be doing discharge planning. You can expect to be an admission nurse. You can expect to be giving immunizations. You can expect to be going down to deliveries. The day-to-day of a neonatal nurse is so variable. And so it's really, really important to just embrace the fact that no 2 days will ever be the same. But the amount of experience and exposure and skills that you will gain within this job role is amazing. In terms of salary for a neonatal nurse, you will be paid according to your banding and your experience, and that will be in line with the NHS pay scale. If you decide to make the move abroad, neonatal nurses are highly sought after, particularly if you have postgraduate qualifications within the neonatal specialisms. You will be highly sought after, and sort of in private hospitals when you're working abroad where salary is negotiable, you will find that you can expect to be paid very well as a neonatal nurse, because they are very it's a very rare specialism that is still massively understaffed across all countries in NHS and in private sectors. So you will be definitely in demand. Neonatal nurses primarily work in the hospital because of the nature of the specialism. However, it depends on the type of role you decide to branch into as a neonatal nurse, because there will be some variety within the hospital where you may be working. So if you are a community/discharge nurse, you'll find yourself less at the bedside, and you'll find yourself more working sort of with health visitors, with community nurses. You'll find yourself doing a lot of sort of going into patient homes, seeing how patients have settled in since discharge. You'll find yourself, even dealing with things like oxygen delivery and making sure that is, being put into a patient's home. You'll find yourself working with social workers where there might be social concerns. You'll find yourself, liaising with the council about housing, and if the housing is suitable for a patient who's going home. If you are decide to go down the educational route, you're not necessarily going to be at the bedside. Your focus is going to be more on sort of teaching nurses and the education around that. If you decide to sort of become a band 6 or a band 7, you may find that you do still have patient contact and you are at the bedside. However, you might find that you're going to be doing more managerial and senior roles, like working with students and mentoring newly qualified nurses, being in charge. If you decide to work with the transport team, you might find that you're actually going up and down the country delivering patients between different neonatal networks. So it's all about what role you decide to go into, and you will find yourself placed in various settings depending on that role. In terms of working as a neonatal nurse in an NHS sector or a private sector, I would say the only real difference is in regards to the patient ratio. So you'll find that in a private sector, you're more than likely to have less patient to nurse ratio in comparison to the NHS, but the principles of what you are doing and your basic nursing care is the same, and there isn't really much difference. You might find that some of the private hospitals might have maybe more equipment that goes around and can be more like one-to-one, but generally speaking, there aren't really that much differences in terms of the nursing care between an NHS and private sector. One of the things that keeps me excited about being a neonatal nurse is knowing that no 2 day will ever be the same. I'm somebody who really enjoys variety, and you get that within neonates. So you could come on shift and you start off with just one patient and you can end the shift with 3 patients. You could be on admission and attend 5 deliveries in one day. And so no 2 days are ever the same. And those are the sorts of things that keep me really excited. I also love the fact that I play a role and I have an impact in people's lives right at the start of their journey into this world. And that is something that I don't take lightly, and I find it a massive privilege, actually. It's really exciting seeing patients getting well and seeing them grow and change, and seeing them develop personalities, and seeing how parents as well blossom in themselves and seeing their growth as parents. That excites me, and these are some of the things that keep me really motivated and excited about my job. I would say one of the main challenges of being a neonatal nurse is when the outcomes are not always favourable. No matter how experienced you are, no matter how long you've been doing this job, it is still difficult working with sick infants, and it's really difficult when, despite the efforts of yourself and the team and the parents, the outcome is not always favorable, and sometimes the outcomes are not always positive. And I think that can be really challenging, and that can be really difficult to deal with, because you sometimes then feel like, what have we achieved if we haven't been able to send this baby home with their parents? That can sometimes be quite difficult to deal with as well. I deal with the emotions of the job by allowing myself to feel whatever I feel in that moment, and knowing that my feelings are valid. So if something happens and it upsets me, I allow myself to be upset by that, because I'm human, and it's okay to feel emotion for your patients and their situation. You're allowed to feel sad, you're allowed to feel frustrated if maybe something hasn't gone to plan. I think as long as it doesn't impact on your nursing care in that immediate moment, it's okay. I'd really advise you to speak with your colleagues, with your manager, make sure you're booking your annual leave, make sure you're leaning on your networks outside of work. And this will really help you to deal with your emotions as well. So the type of person who makes a good neonatal nurse is someone who's kind, empathetic, reassuring, someone who is very patient, someone who is very calm, someone who works well under pressure, somebody who has got great attention to detail and someone who is very thorough. These are just some of the many qualities that I believe you need to possess as a neonatal nurse. And so if you have these sorts of qualities and these personality traits, you may find that you'll do really well within the neonatal specialism. I think when it comes to interviews, regardless of what role you are going for within neonates, whether it's an educational role, a band 6 role, a matron role, the number one tip that I would give you for interviews is passion. Be passionate, show your passion, show your enthusiasm. Being passionate and showing your enthusiasm really goes a long way. And if you are passionate about this specialism and it's something that you really want to do, that will absolutely shine through in your interviews, and it will always give you an edge and an advantage, because you can teach people skills, you can teach people knowledge, but you cannot teach people how to be passionate and enthusiastic about a specialism. That comes from within. So that would be my number one tip for interviews, regardless of how junior or experienced you are. The type of person who might choose to become a neonatal nurse is somebody who enjoys looking after babies. Neonates involve sick infants. So if you are somebody who likes working with babies, you know, you've got a passion and an interest for it, you'll definitely find that neonates may be a good fit for you. Also, somebody who likes working alongside families. Babies will never be in hospital on their own. They'll never come into hospital on their own. And so you have to be able to work in collaboration with their parents or their caregivers. And so if you're somebody who likes that kind of nursing dynamic of building, you know, professional relationships with families, then you might find that working within neonates is something you could enjoy. If you're somebody as well who likes to work within a specialism that's very focused on somewhat becoming an expert in your field, and you like sort of focusing your care on maybe just 1 to 2 patients, and really understanding your patients and their conditions, and you like being able to you know, focus your attention and pay attention to detail, and you're very thorough, you may find that actually neonates would be a good fit for you. So I hope you found that useful. Thank you so much for watching.